It was just the silence of the forest, and I thrust a large hunting knife in towards my heart at full speed. And I was a pretty big and strong guy. And somehow I literally, in that process, all of a sudden I dissolved in this white ball of light.
How did you dig yourself out of all of the things you were feeling? You mentioned being suicidal. How did you get on the other side of that?
Well, an accompanying aspect of that is because I was such a good athlete, I was bigger, more athletic, more capable, so this whole Marine thing was just a piece of cake for me. And when I chose not to go, that was also choosing not to be there with these fellows that I was in training with. And you could see they were going to get killed. And so there was a lot of guilt that I didn't go, and probably could have definitely made a difference in their lives. When it came time to, commit suicide, because I didn't want to move forward in my life, said, hey God, if you have anything to say, this might be the moment you want to say it in. And my body was gone. I was just in this white, beautiful light, but there was a sense of the perfection of existence. And I saw that even though I didn't see what my purpose was, I knew I had purpose. All of a sudden there was this deep sense, of the beauty of life. What a tremendous opportunity it was. And when I came out of that, and I really have no idea how much time passed, I was in this whole new world.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Round 2 podcast. I am your host, Nikki Corbett. And if you are someone that watches this podcast and pays attention to my background, you might recognize these white walls and know that I am back in California right now, coming to you after a month of traveling in the UK. And this week, my guest is named Ron Stotts. Ron, welcome to the Round 2 podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You are so welcome. We had a brief introduction last week. I was immediately intrigued and wanted to hear your story. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Yeah.
So you talk about conscious leadership, which I think is so important. So tell me a little bit about that, but then I absolutely am going to want to take a trip backwards to hear about your journey to arriving there.
There's a lot of backwards, but yeah. Yeah, I think I was publishing my first book, and my publisher kind of said, well, who's your niche? Who's your specific audience, your avatar, whatever the terminology is that they use then.
Yeah.
And I, since I was working with general public, I didn't really have one. And I certainly was working with some incredibly high level leaders. And so they sort of, let's take a look at that. And in exploring that, I recognized that it's really higher level conscious leaders who can have the greatest and lasting impact on not only an organization, but on a societal level. And that's when I got interested, because my little hidden agenda is to try and, how do we create a more conscious and caring world?
Yeah.
And so if these top conscious leaders, just because they're successful does not make them conscious, by the way.
Correct.
But, I happen to have this unique ability of taking people into those levels of leadership, levels of consciousness. And so let's, focus in on that. And so far it's been fantastic. Yeah.
I think that's really great because, a lot about that really boils down to getting to know yourself on a very deep level.
Yeah.
And I think that is certainly for my journey in life, that has been one of the most important things that I have. I really feel like it's a gift that I've given myself to get to know myself. Right. So how did you get there?
Well, by not knowing myself in the beginning. No, I was this all-American kid growing up. I grew up in the Northwest, so I spent a lot of time outdoors and very much into athletics. And I was a terrible student, to be quite honest. I was an expert at looking out the window.
Well, there's a lot to see out there, right?
Yeah, it was beautiful. But, I really... I was a U.S. rowing champion, and I had this beautiful girlfriend. And so it was like, okay, I got it all figured out. Here we go. And then, the Vietnam War was going on, and I decided to join the Marine Corps and kind of following my father's footsteps in terms of military service. And feeling that that's the path. And
Yeah.
it wasn't very long into that path before they threw up a human silhouette in front of me on the rifle range. And my little 19-year-old mind said, "Oh, what you're one of the
Oh,
best at is killing people. This is not a
okay.
sporting event." And
Yeah.
so I really, backed away very quickly. And in the Marines, that's not too acceptable.
Mhm. So, wait, hold on. You did say one thing. You said that you were on a shooting range and you realized that you were good at hitting that target, but in this case, the target was human beings. Now,
Well, yeah,
were
they had always
you
had these circles before, and then it was
Yeah.
kind of this the athlete in me is like, "Oh, okay, can I hit this?"
Uh-huh.
But when this human silhouette came up, it really woke me up. I mean,
Uh-huh.
literally, I just, I was on my feet before I knew it, and I was throwing my rifle down, and some button got pushed that says, "You are a conscientious objector.
Oh,
You don't want
uh-huh.
to kill human beings."
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's got to
Yeah,
be such an interesting, mind just moment within your brain where
seriously.
something clicks. I mean, because I've shot guns before and
Yeah,
shot at
yeah,
targets,
right.
and it's got to be very strange when all of a sudden you realize that you're great at hitting this target, and then it changes to a silhouette of a human, and then you're like, oh, wow, I'm
Yeah,
also great at this.
yeah.
Now,
And
were you in Vietnam when this was happening, or was this before you
no,
deployed?
this was before, and I really, to be honest with you, I chose to find a way to not go, and
Okay.
I'd damaged myself physically in training, and so I just decided to use that. I was
Mhm.
hearing all these stories about the people who were coming back, and
Mhm.
the truth is, I lost several dozen close
Mm.
friends over there, and
Yeah.
by the time I did get out, it was a year. I got out on medical discharge, but
Mhm.
I was a mess. I
Yeah.
didn't realize, I had never recognized that my sensitivities before. I had never
Oh.
recognized my empathy and compassion and all of
Mhm.
those things. And
Mhm.
so all of a sudden, I was completely at the effect of them and suicidal,
Oh
and
my
not knowing
gosh.
what I wanted to do with my life.
Uh-huh.
And it was really, that's when I began my inner journey. And it's like, well, who am I? What are my values? What
Mhm.
is my life about? And
Yeah.
what do I want to contribute? And how do I want to support creating a
You
world that
mentioned
fits that?
you mentioned how you didn't realize that you were sensitive, although I think it's a very fair reaction to losing friends in war. So I wouldn't, I wouldn't think that that would is too big of a surprise, because I think any of us would feel devastated losing one friend, let alone many,
Right.
in a situation like that. So, I absolutely want to, thank you for your service.
Hmm.
And I am, so sorry that you had to go through all of that during that time. And,
Yeah.
so how did you dig yourself out of all of the things you were feeling? You mentioned being suicidal. How did you get on the other side of that?
Well, an accompanying aspect of that is because I was such a good athlete, I was bigger, more athletic, more capable. I've been
Mhm.
playing in the woods all of my life,
Mhm.
so this whole Marine thing was just a piece of cake for me.
Yeah.
And so when I chose not to go, that was also choosing not to be there with these fellows that I was in training with, and not
Mhm.
being able to. And I could see their inadequacies. I could see, the mistakes they were making. I could see
Yeah.
they were going to get killed.
Oh.
And so there was a lot of guilt that I didn't go, and probably
Mhm.
could have definitely made a difference in their lives. And so, it just, I found myself not knowing what to do. I had a chemical imbalance due to all the post-traumatic stress syndrome stuff. And,
Mhm.
at 20, 21, nobody, I didn't know anything about psychology. I didn't know anything about any of that.
Yeah.
And so when it came time to, commit suicide because I didn't want to move forward in my life, it was fairly straightforward thought. It wasn't complicated. I just went out in the woods for a few days to really understand whether that was the choice and that what I felt was best. And I came to the conclusion that it was. And I, sat down on a big boulder and said, you know, hey, God, if you have anything to say, this might be the moment you want to say it in. And there was just the silence of the forest, and I thrust a large hunting knife in towards my heart at full speed. And I was a pretty big and strong guy, so no half-heartedness.
Whoa.
And somehow, I literally, in that process, all of a sudden I dissolved in this white ball of light. And
Oh
I'm
my
like,
God.
what? And
I feel like I'm watching a movie in the background, like my hand is
yeah,
shaking.
I felt like it. I mean, my body was gone. The space that I was in was gone. I was just in this white, beautiful light, but there was a sense of
Wow.
the perfection of existence, and the oneness of existence, and feelings that I just never even knew about, let alone had before. And I
Yeah.
saw that, even though I didn't see what my purpose was, I knew I had purpose. All of a
Okay.
sudden, there was this deep sense, of the beauty of life. That
Mm-hmm.
the what a tremendous opportunity it was. And
Yeah.
when I came out of that, and I really have no idea how much time passed.
Uh-huh.
The knife was some distance away, and
Mm-hmm.
I was in this whole new world.
Wow.
I literally went directly from there up to a little cabin that we had in the family for decades. I mean, it was literally a outhouse, wood stove,
Okay.
no electric kind of
Uh-huh.
cabin. And I just settled in. I just started, walking and breathing and
Mm-hmm.
looking
Were you
inwardly. And
were you injured?
no, I mean, other than just a small puncture, just above
Okay,
the
so
heart.
thankfully you didn't,
Yeah,
despite your
no,
strength, you didn't hurt yourself
yeah,
too
and I don't
badly.
know how. I mean, I don't know how one could stop the force in
I
that.
don't know how one could even do that. I mean, that I think speaks volumes to the depth of despair that you were
Yeah,
feeling
oh, it
in
was
those moments.
absolutely, absolutely.
To, I mean, sometimes it's like you think about, having to give yourself a shot of, vitamins that's in this little tiny needle, and you're like,
I
oh, I don't
wouldn't be
know that
able
I
to
could
do
do
that.
that. So I feel like
Yeah, yeah.
that must have been a really, like, incredibly dark time,
Yeah, I
but
didn't feel like
also,
I had another path. I really didn't.
yeah.
But so that that gift, if you will,
Mhm.
allowed me to go on my own inner journey, to begin to recognize where I'd come
Yeah.
from, who I was, what I needed. And there were abundance of people like myself at that point to help me. So
Mhm.
it was a difficult journey, but I
Wow.
did find people to help, and people who knew, and guides,
Mhm.
masters, that my life was filled with them, to be quite honest with you. Incredible people
Oh
who
my
came into my
gosh.
life that supported me and guided me.
Like, I wonder, so did you tell anybody what happened in
Mm,
the woods?
no.
How long did it take before you started speaking about it?
Oh, maybe 10 years ago.
Oh, wow, really? Oh my
Yeah,
gosh,
yeah,
this is amazing.
yeah.
Because you hear these things, right? I mean, I feel like I've heard for years these stories, and I say stories because I've never met anybody that's had
Uh-huh,
that experience where they say,
yeah,
like, oh, I was in the hospital after an accident and I saw the light, or I saw this, and you think, like, okay, like, I wonder if that's real. And I
yeah.
feel like it makes me feel good, because I always do. I've always been someone that's believed in a higher power, and that there's more than just us as human beings wandering around the earth, and that, we're all, like, connected in some way, and the universe, and all of these different things. But to actually hear what you said about this big white light and feeling like there's a purpose and that you have purpose is so profound.
Well, and to me, of course, I wondered, it's like, what was that? How do I get back to that? And so,
Hmm.
where my was guided to was meditation, and to
Okay.
breathe. Meditation is about a single pointed focus, and
Hmm.
so I found that breathing would allow me not only to go within myself to greater depths and heal, but it would
Uh-huh.
also allow my mind to focus and quiet. And
Hmm.
so it really became a journey into silence, a journey into that light.
Okay.
And
Okay.
yeah, so I did very much accomplish. I'd probably meditated 30,000 plus hours by my late
Wow.
30s.
Uh-huh.
And so I got into it. But
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you have to tell me more about meditation because I feel like it's such a challenge for me, but I do have a great respect for silence and what can be on the other side of those silences. So,
well, appreciate that we're only, psychologists now, so I know all sorts of neurological reasons for
yeah.
lots of things. But, we're only aware of about 5 or 10% of our thoughts. So the other 90 plus percent
Dang.
is really subconscious. We're
Uh-huh.
completely unaware of how it's, shaping our lives and
Uh-huh.
sabotaging our lives, limiting our lives,
Yeah,
guiding.
limiting for sure, right?
And so, the inner journey where you really learn to breathe and go within, where you learn to reconnect with that inner child and help that inner child
Mm.
heal, when you
Mhm.
are able to see all the different events and experiences in your life that you didn't heal at the time. And so you go back and
Mhm.
heal those. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, all that subconscious becomes conscious. And
Yeah.
that allows you to be more self aware and emotionally
Mhm.
intelligent.
Mhm.
So things aren't going on that you're not aware of. They're going on. You're aware of them. You're breathing into and healing them.
Mhm.
You're breathing into and being empowered by them. And you
Yeah.
learn to stay focused. And that's really, I made that comment jokingly when we first got together, but my life is, there's nothing more important, and the focus is all about breathing and being curious, breathing
Mhm.
present, because
Yeah.
that's going to keep me in a conscious enough state to recognize that everything that's coming into my life is perfectly designed to support me on my path, opening
Mhm.
up my heart, becoming all that I'm capable of being.
Mhm.
And that, in truth, that, I don't market it that way, but that's really what I'm doing with others.
Uh-huh. So you said perfectly designed to support me on my path. I love the way that you phrased that cuz it just makes you think about things differently.
Well, because as your mind quiets, the amygdala is no longer in charge. The forebrain begins to blossom in that quieter environment, and it becomes the conscious CEO of your life. And
Okay.
that'll gives you greater, bigger picture access. It allows you
Mhm.
to literally be using higher level, intelligence, accessing it. And
Okay.
when you're frightened or stressed, or you literally are shutting off chemical gates and you're, up
Mhm.
into your higher level of thinking.
Mhm.
So, as you quiet the mind and you shift over to your more conscious CEO, the forebrain of your life running it, then
Mhm.
you begin to see that everything, you see opportunity where there was nothing but challenge and problems before.
Yeah.
You begin to see that, oh, the worst, that year in the Marine Corps was the worst, best year of my entire life,
Mhm.
because it
Mhm.
gave me exactly what I needed to
Yeah.
shift the direct trajectory of my life into becoming an extraordinarily conscious, aware, loving
Yeah.
being compared to where I
Uh-huh.
would have been otherwise.
Right, right. No, that's lovely. So how long did you stay up in the cabin in the woods?
Just a little, about not quite a year, and
Okay.
then I started venturing out, and
Uh-huh.
I
So were you completely alone during that year?
yeah, I didn't have any money.
Wow.
I was stealing apples off of a neighbor's tree, and I
Hey, at
mean,
least they were just apples. They probably couldn't eat them all anyway, right?
well, they weren't, it was a summer cabin, so they weren't probably going to be.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I made my way through it, and but yeah, I started working, but I also started studying, and I had been
Mhm.
reading the Bible. I had been reading philosophies and just trying to figure out, hey, anybody know what the heck's going on here and what I'm
Uh-huh.
doing? So that just continued to getting pieces of paper like PhDs in psychology and doctors of chiropractic and
Oh my
other things that I've
gosh.
collected along the way to help me do my
Uh-huh.
mind, body, spirit thing that I do.
Wow. Okay. So what was your first, I guess, like real job, if you will? Like what was the first thing that you did when you started collecting these pieces of paper, like you say?
Well, I was, yeah, I was actually still in school, and Well, yeah, I would say because I had to learn to study, I was a, I, out of the Marine Corps, I was walking across a community college campus with two books. One was the most basic grammar you could possibly imagine, grade school, and the other was math. One
Okay.
plus one, literally was what because I hadn't learned. I
Okay.
didn't have any interest in it. My parents didn't have any values around. I'd just say I'm going downstairs to my bedroom to study, and of course,
And that was it. Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, this is quite a turnaround from something like that to a PhD. So, and that's
Well,
something
I
to certainly
learned
be
to
proud
study,
of.
and so I have a master's in English literature too. But so in the middle of getting my master's, I was hired by Compton Community College to create a learning center because they understood that
Oh.
I could teach these kids how to learn. And so it was quite successful. And then there was several other colleges and a university that hired me to create learning centers for them.
Oh,
And
cool.
that got me, because of my success rate,
Mm-hmm.
and people were starting to ask me, well, what are you doing? And
Yeah.
it was all intuitive. I didn't really know. I was just doing it. And, so I went back to get my PhD and understand how the brain works so that I can understand how we learn. And that, by the time I had finished preparation for that, I shifted to who are we? What are we capable of? And then, I was running into people. I had Buckminster Fuller, who was a leading thinker back in the 70s, and Joseph Campbell, was my mentor, and he inspired me in many, many ways. But I was also, I had spiritual teachers that we were going out in the desert and dissolving in the infinite and having all sorts of experiences in other worlds and realities. And
that's so cool.
so it really, it's like all of that was really nice. But then there's that part of me that's okay, how do we bring this back? And, what about living and working in the world and applying that so it can grow and prosper and being loving relationships? And so I just started integrating that in, bringing the tools together that I'd been learning, what was most effective for healing the past and empowering the future, and what allowed people to heal that noise so that they could quiet their minds, so that they could explore the bigger picture of who and what they were and what they wanted to do with their life.
So as you were on this journey, which is so incredible, but so like you're just growing, it seems like, in leaps and bounds with, what you're learning, who you are, where you're going. How did that affect your relationships with the people that had been a part of your life since the beginning, like your family or any friends that you had maintained closeness with?
I remember my dad introduced me once, and he said, I think he's a yoga teacher.
That's awesome.
Literally after I've got all those pieces of paper and everything.
Yeah.
I remember my mom saying once about my niece, oh, she's the first one to graduate from college.
You're like, wait a minute.
I didn't say anything. It didn't matter to me.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I mean, they didn't know who I was anymore. I wasn't the all-American boy. I wasn't, the son that they had raised, and different values, different focus, everything. And so certainly that was true for my friends in high school and whatnot. And I was running around with, John Gray, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus guys, and people like that. And
other yoga teachers.
Yeah. Thank God. And then I remember one night I was in a large auditorium with several hundred people, and my spiritual teacher was talking to us. And it was a very rare evening. I usually wouldn't get, personally dealing with questions or things from us. And I raised my hand boldly and said, what? I'm thinking about getting a PhD in psychology and da-da-da. And he goes, well, Ron, you're supposed to be a spiritual teacher. That's what you've always wanted, and that's really what you're going to be. And
interesting.
That just rocked my world. I mean, everybody in the auditorium was like, so, with my PhD and with that sort of bow of what I was supposed to be doing and who I was, I opened my own centers in Santa
Okay.
Barbara initially, but then in
Uh-huh.
Switzerland, and had many in different parts of Europe.
Okay.
And it was really then that I became a spiritual teacher. And yet I still had, it's like, okay, well, if you meditating is good, but to be able to
Mm-hmm.
meditate, you have to quiet your mind. So let's heal these things and become whole and open up your heart, open up your mind, and then let's meditate and play on those levels of
Mm-hmm.
consciousness. And it worked extremely well. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so hundreds, if not thousands, of people went through our programs, and
Wow.
many became. I gave them a large 3-story building that somebody had given us,
Uh-huh.
and they still have that. And the top floor is for yoga, the middle one's for alternative medicine, and the bottom one's
Okay.
for traditional medicine.
So yoga is in there.
Yeah,
No. Well,
right.
wait, so
Oh,
how did you end up going from having a center in Santa Barbara to transferring that or moving over to Europe and opening centers there? What was the impetus for that?
I lead a very accidental life.
Okay. Yeah.
Did I
That's why
do
I'm like, wait,
anything?
I feel like we've
I
been up
didn't
and
do
down the
anything.
West Coast quite a bit, and now all of a sudden we're in Switzerland. So how do we
All my
get there?
leadership is kind of accidental. Everything that I've done, it just sort of falls
Uh-huh.
in. Yeah, I was working out of my home. I had a lovely home right by the ocean, and people would come, and it was all great.
Mm-hmm.
And one day, in between clients, somebody knocked on the door, and there was 2 people talking German to me on the front.
Hmm.
At least I thought it was German, Swiss German.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, I don't understand what you say.
Yeah.
And it turns out somebody from India said, you've got to go see this guy. And so, it's like, who in the world would have that been? And
Okay.
so they came and they stayed with me for at least 6 months, taking all
Mm-hmm.
my programs. They were part of my meditation group and developmental
Wow.
work that they did. And when they got back to Switzerland, they, within a few weeks, had each gotten a few people that were willing to let them sit in on their coaching or training or
Uh-huh.
therapy, and so that they could continue to learn and do what I was doing. And so we offered a meditation in 3 meditation evenings in Zurich, and
Mm-hmm.
several hundred people came.
Wow. That's
This is back in the day where
amazing.
you put out a flyer and,
Yeah, what year was this?
for 1820, I don't know. No, it's probably in the late 70s. Yeah.
Okay, okay.
And so it grew very quickly,
Mhm.
and pretty much anywhere I was going, a friend of mine in Florida, I was just going to visit him, and he said, well, let's do a talk in this Unity Church. And so he
Mhm.
put out flyers, and a few hundred people came there. And so that was kind of
Wow.
what was happening. The energy was just
Uh-huh.
calling that. The first one I did in Santa Barbara, the first public, meditation, it 3 evening thing. And to be honest with you, I had some students, and they were kind of setting up and everything, and I was going to show up and hoping somebody'd come. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
and and the room was standing room only, and people were out the door,
Oh
looking
my
through the
gosh.
open doors. And so I don't, and there's
That's
no ego
so
about that
cool.
because I didn't do anything.
Right. And you gotta think though, like, what I love about this and this type of spirituality is that eh, knowing that even in a time without the internet, right, without all these things that are available to us to connect with people, to market to people, to do all these different things, with back in the 70s when you have flyers and dial rotary phones, that you're putting these things together and people are showing up. And I think that that is just such a testament to the fact that we all are craving something there to get to know each other better, to get to know ourselves better, to heal ourselves in certain different ways from things that we don't really understand, but they aren't like, oh, I'm in pain or I'm hurting and I need to go to the doctor. It's a different type of healing. So that's
Well, and there
fascinating.
was more openness and courage to do that sort of thing back then.
Mhm.
There,
Yeah.
I think even, and I watch it sort of periodically rise and fall, but
Mhm.
there are different times in our culture where people get more interested. And
Mhm.
I think we're moving out of one right now.
Uh-huh.
Politically, things are changing, and
Uh-huh.
people, yeah, they're more frightened. They're more comfortable being shut down rather than opening up.
Mm-hmm.
And so, for me, I'm just this little guy trying to help leaders become more conscious so they can create a more supportive environment. And
Uh-huh.
the benefit of that, or the great thing with that, is when you look at any leadership research, is those more conscious leaders end up creating more successful
Mm-hmm.
organizations. That
Mm-hmm.
increases their productivity, increases their profits by at least 50%.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I've had fellow a few years ago. He had 5 9-figure businesses,
Holy
and
smokes.
within a year, he had doubled the value of 3 of them just because of his own inner transformation and
Yeah.
the dissemination of that shift throughout his
Uh-huh.
organization. And so, yeah.
I mean, it's so true. I just look back on my own career and the different people who have been, you know, directors or CEOs or whomever it
Mhm.
is that I've worked
Yeah.
with or worked for, and it is, leadership is tough, and
Yeah.
there's so many personal aspects of it that
Right.
I think people don't always recognize when they're getting into those roles. But it takes a lot more than having business sense to be a great leader.
Yeah, it does. I mean, and every generation's a bit different, looking for different things, and there's more
Hmm.
diversity, and there
Hmm.
might be denial of that, but the truth is there's a lot of diversity in the world today, and
Yeah.
acceptance of things that I didn't even know about.
Yeah. No kidding.
And so you have to come in to a work environment and create a safe, supportive place where
Hmm.
people can trust each other, because that allows them to feel like they're part of something that's important, and that
Yeah.
allows them to give their all and feel committed to
Hmm.
what you're doing, and that creates that cooperation, excuse me, and collaboration that results in
Yeah.
those increased productivity and profits. It's fairly straightforward, and it
Hmm.
happens every time. So
Yeah. Yeah.
there's no mystery there.
So, how did you end up on this path? How did your journey lead you here to working with different leaders and teaching them everything that you've learned and helping them be the best they can be?
Well, it really did come down to when I was publishing my first book, and my publisher asked me to explore leadership more fully, and whether
Mhm.
that wasn't really who I wanted to be working with. And when I saw that they could and did have the greatest impact on an organizational and societal level, I thought, okay, since
Mhm.
I have this unique ability of taking people into higher states of consciousness and guiding them and neurologically rewiring their brain so they can access their full capability,
Mhm.
and I can help them to guide them in developing their leadership skills. Some of the reasons I can do that is because I've made mistakes and learned, and others
Yeah.
I've been interested in it for a long time. But
Mhm.
I watched that happen, and I watched a CFO come in, and a year later he's CEO, and then he's
Mhm.
sending other people, or she's sending people,
Mhm.
and all of a sudden the result of their consciousness, their self-acceptance and love, their
Mhm.
willingness to really create a more cooperative, collaborative organization that I've been talking about, it's just spreading through the world. And
Yeah.
so, what I'm looking for now is, well, how do we maximize that impact? And
Mhm.
fortunately, I've just a client that is just recently graduated from my more advanced work, and we're going to be creating a coaching program, and we
Awesome.
can create more people who are
Uh-huh.
using all the tools and have the abilities to help others transform their lives. So it's still growing,
Yeah.
you know.
So do you have a specific, I'm sure your answer is going to be no, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Do you have a specific niche or certain type of leader that tends to find you, or are you working with people across the board?
Yeah, it always has moved in waves. There's all of a sudden I'll be the therapist, or I'll be the
Mhm.
working with the gay community, and
Mhm.
even when I had centers in different continents, I would watch the transition still,
Yeah.
go through the same things and work
Mhm.
with relationships, and so the same is true now, that all of a sudden I'll be working with tech people for
Mhm.
some time. And, of course, they're referring, their friends and
Yeah.
colleagues and that type of thing. So that goes on for a while. And right now I'm working with the highest level of realtors. Realtors. I have to learn to say that word.
Oh, yes, realtors. Okay.
But at other times it's, just, I'm working with a woman right now in India who's transforming the educational system in India.
Oh,
In
cool.
incredible ways, and supporting the kids of mothers and families and that type of thing. And so it's, now the coaching program and that.
Yeah.
And so it's so maybe I should say, no, there's nothing specific.
Yeah. No, I think it's so interesting. I mean, I even find with this podcast, like the people that start coming my way, like it's like all of a sudden I'm like, oh my gosh, like these people have so many things in common that I just had these conversations with over the last month. And then a new wave of folks comes through and I'm like, oh, and I mean, it's energy, it's all the different things in the world going on and different things that I'm putting out into the world that are causing people to reach out to me. So it's always fun to ask that type of question when you're working with something that is very transferable and that, I would say any sort of leader should want to get as comfortable and know themselves as best they can if they want to grow.
I mean, right now, I think I'm working with 5, and they don't know each other, 5 different people who are from India. So
interesting.
Go figure.
Yeah. No kidding.
I mean, it's just, it's just.
That's so cool.
That way. There's a perfection in it. There really is.
Mm-hmm. So what does your meditation process look like today?
Well, it graduates. When I was younger, I'd go through my practices and there'd be this kind of crashing through the woods results where you really feel the dramatic results in what's happening with the practice. And it gets subtler and subtler. And at this point in my life, it's very, very subtle.
Okay.
So the goal is really to be meditating all the time, to be living that mindfully. And the goal is to always be breathing and curious and present. The goal is to, to appreciate everything that's coming into my life and be mindful, whether I'm hitting a golf ball or in a conversation or doing whatever. It's like the game is, how mindfully am I doing this? So spiritual practice becomes your life.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean I don't, I still teach meditation. I have taught meditation for probably over 50 years now. And the meditation practice that I use and what I teach is really the same. And it's, there's a myriad of meditation styles out there. They all, when you really look at them, they all have the one thing in common is they have a single pointed focus.
Okay.
And so, the whirling dervish dance in a circle. Fine, that's their thing. And I've tried it and it works. I mean, you lose it for a moment, you spin out.
Yeah.
But, there's mantras and yantras and being buried, if you're a shaman and all kinds of things. But, for me, I saw early on, it's like, well, I always have my breath. It's always available to me. It's always there to focus on, and I can control my level of consciousness quite comfortably and easily by using my breathing styles.
Okay.
And so breathing for me is my single pointed focus for not only my meditation, but throughout my life. And, a friend of mine who's a, ninth Dan Grand Master in martial arts or something. I don't know
wow.
names, but he said to me one day at lunch, we'd have lunch once a week down in the harbor in Santa Barbara, and he said, "So what's your reference for how well you're doing?" And I said, "Well," and it was really, how many breaths does it take me to get centered and quiet?
Oh, okay.
And so for me, if it takes more than one breath, then I've got some cleanup to do.
Oh, okay.
If it took 20 breaths, then I'd better sit down and spend a half a day meditating and make sure everything gets cleaned up.
Dang, I got some work to do, Ron.
Well, but meditating, people talking about it's a waste of time or it takes too much time. It's like, because of how it neurologically rewires your brain, you you
Mhm.
save, you know, so much time. I mean, you literally,
Okay.
especially in a leadership role, you just are getting so much more done. I mean,
Mm.
anybody who knows me, I mean, like my wife recognizes that I get more done in an hour or two than
Mm.
most people would in several days.
Yeah, that's
Mm.
awesome. Do you notice themes from people that come to work with you as far as themes with their struggles or things that they are trying to overcome?
I have, and I think maybe and it's a good question because I recognize maybe I'm shortcutting that. I mean, everybody comes to me with, what's your biggest challenge? It's like, well, it's other people, it's other circumstances, it's outside themselves. So
Mhm.
really the biggest problem I see in leadership is that they're looking outside of themselves for what can only be found within. Solving
Mm.
all those things is just going to help them be better at
Mhm.
whack-a-mole, so, taking care of all the immediate
Yeah.
solutions and problems that they have. Whereas I can go within and get centered and be bold enough to become more conscious and aware, then all of those things shift and
Yeah.
things really do become opportunities. If
Mhm.
you're in a board meeting and somebody breaks into a big conflict,
Mhm.
at one point in my life that was like,
Yeah, yeah.
you know but nowadays I would just watch it with interest and see what comes up
Mhm.
with that emotional release. I
Uh-huh.
wouldn't let it get out of hand, but
Sure.
the other hand, there's a lot of value and insight that comes forward in that sort of situation, and
Mhm.
that allows us to go deeper and allows us for deeper healing and
Yeah.
empowers us to move forward in a more accelerated rate too.
Mhm. No, that's really a good insight. How do you feel vulnerability plays a role in your teachings when you have different people come in at different stages of their awareness and leadership?
Yeah, vulnerability is an interesting one, especially for a male. You know,
Mm, mhm.
growing up when I did,
Yeah.
I used to I remember in my early 30s, I prided myself on kind of having a chess game going on. I
Okay.
always could anticipate 5 moves at least,
Okay.
things that might happen and how I could respond to them and that type of thing as you would in a chess game.
Mhm.
And, uh, and I had to laugh at myself during a meditation when I realized, oh, that's just keeping me in my head and really
Yeah.
holding me back from a much more expanded way of being and living. And so,
Uh-huh.
that's, it's not about controlling. I completely lost where we're going there. So if you can redirect me, that would be good.
Oh, no, I was asking about vulnerability and how that plays a role in
Thank
your
you. Okay.
teachings. Yeah, yeah, sure, no problem.
So yeah, I mean, so I realized, oh, I don't want to be vulnerable. I'm keeping myself,
Mm,
and so that became my next, growth opportunity.
yeah.
And of course, I discovered there's so much strength and ability in that vulnerability. It's like,
Yes,
oh my
yes.
god, you know.
It's crazy though because, I used to be very similar where I was, like, "Oh, I've got this. I've got this." There's never anything wrong. Everything was always great even though like it wasn't, and on the inside I'm, just melting down and I'm, in tears when I'm by myself and at my last corporate role, that was something that my COO really worked on and wanted me to work on, and he saw a significant shift in how I was as a leader once I finally was just like, okay, fine. Like I'm not okay. Like I'm not, I can't do this all myself, or
Yeah.
here's where I'm struggling. So I think it's really important because I think a lot of times people who get into leadership roles, they put this expectation on themselves. And I say on themselves because no one else is putting that expectation on them, that they have to be perfect or they have to have all the answers or they have to do all these things. And it's like, no, like you're human too. You
Well, but
cannot
that's
know.
their fear of not being good enough, their fear of not
Mhm.
being accepted, their
Yeah.
fear of being judged, and so, as they become more whole and complete, as they become more confident and authentic,
Mhm.
then they're able to be more vulnerable, and that, of
Yeah.
course, allows others around them to feel safer because,
Mhm.
"Oh, well, they can talk, I can talk, and we can
Mhm.
communicate and feel, and it's okay," and you
Yeah.
become more compassionate, empathetic with yourself and then with others, and so all of a sudden you're creating that safe, supportive environment that leads to that, increase productivity and profits again. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that is the purpose of business.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
It's to make money.
Exactly.
But I
Right.
also, most of the clients, I would say 99% of the clients, it also becomes they recognize, oh, this is my life, and I want to make all aspects of my life, my family, my organization, everything. I want to make it better. I want to make it more supportive for everybody involved. And so, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's so great. So looking back on this adventurous life you've had, what would you say is the one thing at this point that you're the most proud of?
Not being proud.
Oh. Okay. Okay. Okay.
I don't feel like I've done a darn thing.
Wow.
All I've done is breathe and let go. All I've
Okay.
done is breathe and become.
Yeah.
That's all there is to do. And there's no accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
You just learn to be.
Okay.
And
That is not the answer I was expecting, but
not the one
keep going.
I would give.
All right. So, different question then. How do you want to be remembered?
I don't care whether I am.
Oh my gosh. I'm sitting here thinking about all these lives that you've impacted as you've gone on this
Well, if
journey.
there's 100 or thousands of people out there that are doing the work that I do and helping other people,
Yeah.
that'll be great. That'll be
Yeah.
so exciting. I'll be so happy for everybody involved.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, that is. That's a lasting impact. And kind of how you said, how you're working at this point to see how you can impact more people
Right.
at a time versus one-on-one or
Yeah, if my new coaching program, the great thing is, it sounds like a promotion, but it's really not.
no, it's okay.
But it looks like I'm actually, because of how it's falling together,
Mhm.
I'm not only going to be training them, I'm going to have a position that they can move into and earn like 150 grand a year, at least more
Wonderful.
if they want to.
That's
And
exciting. That's
yeah,
awesome.
again, it's like, oh, wait a
Yeah.
minute, this is perfect.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean they might not do their other little coaching gig, their specialty, but at least they're immediately making money. They're immediately successful.
Mhm.
And then they can do whatever they want because they've got the tools to quite literally transform people's lives.
Yeah.
Create an impact that's just incredible for others. So, yeah.
Well, I think that is huge. I mean, I think that that's kind of what matters. I mean, sometimes people have asked me like, okay, like, so you started doing this podcast, like, why are you doing it? What's the point? Or, what do you like about it? And I just love being able to have a conversation, and I love being able to share a story. I love my guests to talk about their journey, because if one person hears it and they learn something and they change their life because of it, like, that's awesome. That is amazing.
Well, you do a great job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, I wasn't looking for a compliment, but thank you.
You can be proud of yourself.
Oh, now you're going to make me think a lot about pride. And when I think about that, because some days I do wonder, I think like, am I not as like proud of the things that I've done? Or do I not like, tell myself like, hey, good job. Like, you're doing these things and you're living authentically, or you're doing all these things when, it's like, there's the world moves so fast and there's so many things going on that you can easily put so much pressure on yourself to be like, okay, I got to do this. And I try really hard not to do that, because I have come to find that the more I just live in alignment with who I am and who I continue to evolve to be, the more the right people and things start coming my way. And I really enjoy that. It's been so fun. So I want to keep that. I like having fun.
Good for you. Yeah, I have a great relationship with my little boy.
Yeah.
I mean, this one.
Yes. It's so true, right? I mean, it's funny because I feel like the first time I ever heard this like inner child thing, I thought, what is that? Like, come on.
I was there too. I know.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it's real. I mean, I caught myself the other day. I can't even remember what it was, but I went, "That a boy?"
Oh, that's
That just
cool.
spontaneously came out. Oh,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I remember what it was, but it was, yeah. There's just I so enjoy being connected to all the different aspects of myself.
Mhm.
They really are a unified expression of authenticity. I can't say the word, but
Authenticity.
authenticity. Thank you.
Yeah.
But there's still, yeah, I still really relish when those different aspects, I mean, I'll be sitting in meditation. There's this kind of a wisdom comes through.
Mhm.
That's another part. And, so you
Yeah.
just, yeah, there's no limit to what we are, what we're capable of.
Mhm.
And you need to journey into, or you'll want to journey into the silence, breathe into the silence
Mhm.
to discover those aspects of yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whew. Wow. So what are some things that you do when you're not teaching people how to meditate and making all these great leaders in the world? What do you do for fun?
Well, I love boating.
Uh-huh.
I love golf.
Okay.
I don't compete in it.
Mhm.
But I mean, I might be in a competition, but it's just how mindful can I be with this much disruption around me?
Yeah, yeah.
But I a little embarrassing, but I had, along with this work, I studied in Japan, Japanese gardens, and I'm a
Okay.
designer and builder of Japanese gardens, and
Okay.
I,
Wasn't expecting that.
yeah,
Awesome.
I've created $1 million Japanese gardens, and
Wow.
and I live on a few acres here, and
Uh-huh.
it's got a very strong Asian feel. And
Nice.
so for me, the other day I've got a platform over here with a meditation bench in it,
Mhm.
and I needed to trim the Japanese maples that are casing it,
Mhm.
and I'll find myself in the middle of doing that in the highest state of consciousness I could possibly be in, because I know how
Mhm.
to do it really well. But
Yeah.
you're just so present with, you can see the tree where it is, you can see
Mhm.
where you want it to be 5 years from now, and so you're just trimming and
Oh,
present with
cool.
all of
Uh-huh.
these things, and that there's a real joy in that. I mean,
Yeah.
being present and one with nature, and
Mhm.
the ducks watching me and the eagle flying
Yeah.
over, and
Ooh, I love eagles.
not bad.
Yeah. No, there is something. I mean, I think that it's so important to have, hobbies and things that you enjoy doing and things that you can, create or better skills that you can do, whether it's something that you're doing just for your own simple enjoyment. And it doesn't always have to be something that you're necessarily sharing with the world or that you're making money off of. It's just that, like you said, that present moment where you're just kind of in the flow and creating something that, whether it's like your tree that you're like, hey, in 5 years I know what this is going to look like because I just made this cut, or if it's like making a meal for yourself or
Yeah.
your family, whatever that may be.
Yeah, I mean, my wife and I love to walk in nature. We'll be doing that
Mhm.
in about 20 minutes.
Nice. That sounds perfect.
We do that every day. We walk a few miles in nature and
Uh-huh.
different places around where we live, and so
Uh-huh.
it's quite lovely. We get to see the beauty of nature. I mean, there's so many critters around here. I mean, even on
Yeah.
our property, we've seen bear and coyotes, and
Oh, dang.
it's endless.
Uh-huh.
It really
Have
is.
you ever had any guests that have been come a little too close for comfort on your property?
It's a very large black bear, which I had,
Oh, wow.
I'd seen bear, but always at a distance when I was out in the, hiking or something. But this
Uh-huh.
kind of a big, young, I was just like, oh my God. I mean,
Yeah.
whatever thoughts you might have of winning an argument with a bear, like,
Right.
you, you win.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
You're like, you,
he was so big, and his coat was so perfect, and he was so
wow.
athletic and moved. And,
Uh-huh.
he literally about 5 feet in front of the house,
Oh.
standing up, checking out the bird feeders. And fortunately, there
Uh-huh.
was no food in them that day. Otherwise, they would
Wow.
have gotten ripped down. But,
Yeah.
he drew a deep level of respect.
I bet. You're like, this is your world, buddy.
Yeah.
Do what you need to do.
I was coming back from a walk just about 4 evenings ago, and it's a roadway that comes back to the house and just lined with trees for about a couple miles.
Mm-hmm.
And down where the bay comes in right by the house, and I see something coming up the road, and it's about 10 feet above the road.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this eagle with a 6-foot wingspan. He's about 7-8 feet off the ground. Wow. And he's coming right towards me, and he just kind of
Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
And he just carries on and lifts up into a tree about a half mile up.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's going on all the time.
Oh,
it's just, what a joy.
Yeah. During the first year of COVID, there was a family of owls that came and made a house. Well, actually, they had made a nest, and then they left, and then they came back to have their babies.
Right.
And so it was right in the tree. My parents were living at the time on a golf course, and there was this big tree, or lots of big trees, but this tree was right at their fence line. So we watched this owl family just grow, and they got very comfortable seeing my mom and dad in the backyard. So they would come and they would go and sit by the pool and like drink some water. I mean, it was fascinating. My mom would call me and she'd be like, "I've been watching the owls for an hour," because they're just so fascinating. Yeah, it was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah. Well, Ron, this has been such an incredible conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your story with me. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you and learn more about your programs?
I think just going to the website, it's Ron Stotts, STOTTS.com. And basically, there's things they can download to begin their inner journey. Mm-hmm. There's books, there's things they can watch, YouTube and blogs, and got all those things.
Perfect.
But there's also the programs that I offer. And what is really important to me is that somebody feels comfortable enough to reach out and set up a call with me when they're ready. Mm-hmm. And when I say ready, doesn't mean ready to work with me, but ready to understand. Okay, this is my challenge. This is where I want to get to. What do I need to do? To who do I need to become?
Yeah.
To create that life. And I love those conversations. I really do.
Yeah. Well, I love this, and I look forward to learning more from you, and I'm grateful that you're now a part of my world. So thank you again for being here, and everybody who's listening and watching, thank you so much for being a part of the Round 2 podcast community, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you, everyone.